Welcome to Top Stories Hub. Today we've got a new story, a mystery you'll want to unravel. Something about that text message twisted my stomach into knots, but the second I saw it, I knew trouble was brewing. Honey, come by at 7. We've got something incredible planned. Honey. That was the first alarm bell. Emily hadn't called me honey in forever, not with any real warmth, at least. It was always just James or, when she was in one of her foul moods, a clipped J. But honey? She only pulled that out when she was after something big. And, something incredible. Yeah, I knew exactly what that meant. It was never good news. It wasn't some sweet surprise or a cozy evening for just us two. Every time she'd used that phrase before, I ended up signing some document, footing a hefty bill, or mopping up someone else's chaos. I leaned back in my office chair, staring at the text again, my thumb lingering over the screen. I could just ignore it, act like it never came through, but that wasn't really a choice, was it? If I didn't show, she'd throw a fit. She'd blow up my assistant's phone. She'd spin it so I was the villain. And I already had a hunch about the game she was playing. My eyes swept over my office, my safe haven. I'd built this company from scratch, grueling hours, sleepless nights, and risks that somehow paid off. This place carried my name, my sweat, my sacrifices. And Emily? She'd been happy to bask in the rewards. The day we tied the knot, she ditched her job, claiming she wanted to focus on us, and like a fool, I bought it. Turns out, us was her code for extravagant shopping binges, fancy charity events, and pricey getaways with women I could barely name. I didn't push back at first. I wanted to be the guy who gave his wife everything. Maybe that was my biggest screw-up. I let out a heavy sigh, pinching the bridge of my nose. 7 o'clock. A glance at my watch told me I had a few hours, time to figure out if I was walking into this blind or with my guard up. I grabbed my phone and dialed Chris, my oldest and most reliable buddy. You free tonight? I asked the moment he answered. Depends, he shot back. You in a mess? I gave a dry laugh. Something like that. Chris had seen my marriage slide from fiery passion to grudging tolerance to a simmering resentment. He never rubbed it in, though I knew he was dying to. When he first met Emily, he pulled me aside and warned, she's got a plan, man. Keep your eyes open. I should have taken his advice. Spill it, he said. I gave him the quick rundown, the text, the sudden sweetness, the incredible plans. He let out a sharp whistle. That woman doesn't move without a motive. You think she's cooking up something shady? She always is. Need a wingman? I paused. Not yet, but keep your phone close. If I need a quick escape, you're my call. Got your back, he said. And James? Watch yourself. She's not clueless. She's desperate. That was the issue. Desperate people pull reckless stunts. I spent the next hour digging through my financial records, looking for any sneaky transactions I might have missed. Emily had access to our shared accounts, but I'd been wise enough to lock my business funds away. Still, my gut screamed she was plotting something major. Then I checked the home security feed. I'd installed cameras around the house, not expecting burglars, but just to stay in the loop. What I saw froze my blood. There were strangers inside. Not just Emily. Unknown faces. I zoomed in and spotted a guy in a suit flipping through papers on the dining table. A woman was there too, whispering to Emily, gesturing at the documents. My pulse raced. This wasn't just a birthday party. It was a trap. I snatched my keys, took a steadying breath, and made a silent promise, whatever Emily had in store for me tonight, I'd be 10 moves ahead. At 6:55 p.m. I rolled up to my house, our house. The one I'd paid for. The place we dreamed of as our forever home, now just a polished war zone after the last year. I didn't hop out right away. Instead, I peered through the big windows, watching shadows shift, guests murmuring, drinks being poured. It looked festive, normal even. But I wasn't fooled. I stepped out, tweaking my watch. I was deliberately 5 minutes late, not enough to seem rude, but just enough to get under Emily's skin. It worked. The moment she opened the door, her perfectly glossed lips tightened briefly before blooming into her award-winning smile. "Sweetheart," she cooed, pulling me into a hug. "You made it." She reeked of high-end perfume and deceit. I flashed a grin, matching her vibe. Wouldn't dream of missing it. The second I crossed the threshold, I felt every gaze lock onto me. They were waiting, for what, I wasn't sure yet, but I was determined to figure it out. And when I did, I'd flip this so-called birthday surprise right back on them. The atmosphere changed the moment I walked in. I'd been in this house countless times, but tonight, it felt off, staged. Smiles were plastered on, enthusiasm forced, eyes flicking to me and then away too fast. Something was wrong. Emily hooked her arm through mine, her grip a tad too tight, like she thought I might make a run for it before her big reveal. "Everyone's here for you, honey." That word again. Honey. She'd used it in the text, at the door, and now here. It was practically a signal. Any lingering hope that this was just a party evaporated when I scanned the room. My in-laws, her best pals, a handful of her business contacts, people I barely recognized. But the real kicker? 2 lawyers by the dining table, trying way too hard to blend in as regular guests. Lawyers. At my birthday bash. I nearly laughed out loud. Nearly. Instead, I played along. "Well, damn," I said, letting my eyes roam the room. "This is a surprise." Emily gave my arm a squeeze. "Only the best for my husband's special day." Her voice was all warmth, rehearsed, fake. I knew something was coming. The only question was when. Where was the ambush? Chris caught my eye from the corner. No smile, just a steady gaze. He sensed the trouble too. Emily steered me toward the room's center, where a flawless cake sat on the table, too flawless. She'd never gone this hard for my birthday before, not last year, not the year before that. Before we sliced the cake, she declared, her voice ringing out, "Let's kick things off with gifts." Gifts. Sure, let's go with that. But I already knew the biggest present tonight had my name on it, literally. And I was about to uncover how they planned to package it. I let them play their parts. There were a few token presents, a sleek watch from her dad, Robert, a bottle of top-shelf scotch I'd never touched but was somehow still dubbed my favorite. I nodded politely, taking them in, biding my time. Emily clapped her hands. And now, the main event. Here we go. Her father stepped up, all grins. "James, we've all been thinking about what's next for you." "Oh, I'm sure you have. You've worked your ass off," he went on, "built something extraordinary. We just want to make sure you're covered." Covered. Nice word choice. This wasn't about shielding me, it was about guarding their own interests. Emily turned to me, her face radiating that fake, doting look. "We put together a little something to simplify things for you, love." Love. Another word picked with precision. I glanced at the dining table, and there it was, a stack of legal papers, placed just so, too casual, like they wanted me to notice. Emily reached for them, flipping open the first page. "It's just a minor tweak to keep our assets safe." Our assets. I nearly smirked. There was no "our" in this equation. Everything in this house was mine, the business, the investments, the cars and the driveway. I'd built it all, every dollar, every late night, every sacrifice. And now she was trying to snatch it. I looked at Chris. His jaw was clenched. He knew. I turned back to Emily. She was studying me, searching for a crack in my reaction. I gave her a smile. Makes sense, I said, nodding. For us. Her shoulders loosened. I took the papers from her, skimming them deliberately. Property transfer agreement. Business ownership overhaul. Power of attorney. She really thought she had me hooked. I looked up, playing confused. This is a lot to take in. Emily laughed lightly. Oh, don't stress, honey. It's just a formality, a safety net. Sign at the bottom, and we can get back to celebrating. There it was, the moment she thought I'd fold, trusting her without question. I placed the papers on the table, picked up the pen, hesitated, then met her gaze. You know, I said, keeping my tone as breezy as hers, how about a toast first? The room's tension cracked like a whip. Emily's smile wavered, just for a split second, but I caught it. A chink in her armor. She glanced at her dad, then back at me. Absolutely, she said, recovering fast. Great idea. But I could tell what was running through her head, this isn't in the script. Emily clicked her fingers. Let's get some drinks, folks. Flutes were filled with fizzy champagne. I raised mine with a grin. Since we're toasting, I said, I've got a little something to share myself. I let the words hang in the air. The room went quiet. I caught Emily's eye and saw it, a flash of dread. She knew whatever scheme she'd cooked up for tonight, I was about to turn it right back on her. The hush lingered a moment too long. Glasses floated midair, champagne bubbles fizzing unnoticed as every gaze in the place zeroed in on me. Emily's smile stayed glued on, but I noticed the change, the hint of doubt, the way her fingers tightened just a bit on her flute. I took my time, giving my glass a lazy swirl before speaking. I'm grateful for all this, I said, my tone calm and measured. A surprise bash, friends, family. I flicked my eyes toward the dining table, a smirk tugging at my lips. And a pile of legal papers. What else could a guy ask for? A few uneasy laughs rippled through the crowd. Nobody dared say a word. Emily, always the performer, let out a soft chuckle. Oh, James, don't make a big deal out of it. It's just a simple tweak to our finances. I set my glass down and grabbed the stack of documents again, thumbing through them with the casual air of someone browsing a diner menu. Property transfer agreement. Business ownership overhaul. Power of attorney. Emily had been putting in work. I tilted my head, pretending to be curious. So, when did you get these drawn up? She faltered, just for a split second. We've been working on it for a bit. Just tying up loose ends. Got it. I let my fingers glide over the fine print. This bit here, where I hand over the company to you, that's a bold move. Emily's smile grew strained. It's just paperwork, love. It streamlines things for taxes, estate planning, you know, securing our future. Securing our future, I echoed, nodding like I was buying it. I glanced at Robert, her dad, the so-called family head who'd been siphoning off my success as much as she had. He dodged my look, staring hard at his untouched drink. Emily stepped closer, her voice dropping to a gentle, persuasive tone. Honey, you trust me, right? There it was. The final nudge. The last trick. The quiet assumption I'd keep saying yes, like I had for years. But she'd miscalculated. She thought I was still the naive guy she'd married. She thought I was still in the dark. I leaned back against the table, tapping the pen on the papers. Let me get this straight. You want me to sign away my house, my company, everything I've poured my life into. And what do I get in return? Emily blinked, thrown off balance. The same as always, of course, she said, recovering quickly. Nothing changes between us, James. We're just locking in our foundation, keeping things safe. Safe from what? I asked, cocking my head. Are we bracing for a lawsuit? A financial crash? Something I should be clued in on? Her jaw clenched. Don't be ridiculous. Then why tonight? I pushed, relishing the way her facade was crumbling. Why spring this on my birthday? The room was silent as a grave. Emily's eyes darted to the papers, then back to me. Because I wanted it to be meaningful, she said, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. I wanted tonight to be about our tomorrow. About us. Sure. I turned to the two lawyers hovering by the room's edge. I hadn't given them a glance until now, but their presence was like a buzzard's shadow, circling for the moment I signed my life away. Out of curiosity, I asked, who put these together? One of them, a rigid guy in his 50s, cleared his throat. That'd be us, Mr. Thompson. We're representing Mrs. Thompson's interests. I raised a brow. Her interests. Emily shot them a sharp glance. James, don't twist this into something it's not. I let out a real laugh. Am I the one twisting things? I said, tapping the papers again. You roll in with a legal team, round up witnesses, friends, family, to strong-arm me into signing these without a heads-up, and now I'm the one making a fuss for asking questions. Emily's cool exterior cracked. Her dad stepped in, clearing his throat. James, you're blowing this out of proportion. I turned to him, finally calling out the leech. Robert, tell me, how's it feel? He frowned. What's that supposed to? How's it feel to be a guy who's been living off his daughter's marriage for years? I said flatly. That's got to be quite a feather in your cap. Shock rippled through the room. Robert's face darkened. That's out of line. You know what's really out of line? I pointed at the papers. A calculated plot to rob a man of his livelihood while he's cutting birthday cake. Emily snapped, God damn it, James. And there it was. Her polished mask shattered. The flawless wife, the devoted partner, the woman who claimed this was all for our future, gone. In her place was the real Emily, the one who never cared for me, only for what I could give her. You're causing a spectacle, Emily hissed under her breath. No, I'm just laying out the facts, I replied, my voice steady and composed. The reality is, this isn't a party you threw for me tonight. It's a robbery you orchestrated. Her eyes blazed with fury, but she wasn't foolish. She could tell she'd lost her grip on the room. Guests were murmuring, staring. Even the lawyers looked rattled. I let out a breath, placing the pen down. So, Emily, what's your next move? She folded her arms, her lips pressed into a thin line. You were supposed to put your signature on those. And if I refuse? She paused too long. Robert stepped forward, his tone dripping with fake calm. Let's be rational, James. We can sort this out with a conversation. I turned to him. You put my house on the market last week. Robert's face went ashen. Emily froze. That's absurd. I whipped out my phone and flashed the screenshot, a real estate listing. My house. Up for sale. Emily's name was all over it. Then I pulled up the state's business registration change form, filed to shift my company's ownership before I'd even seen the papers. I locked eyes with her. You really thought I'd miss this? She didn't flinch. I did what was necessary. A confession, so blunt, so icy. I shook my head. You're something else, you know that. Then I grabbed the documents and tore them clean in half. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emily's face contorted with rage. James. I glanced at Chris, who'd been leaning against the back wall, arms crossed. You get that on video? I asked. He raised his phone, the camera still recording. Emily sucked in a jagged breath, the truth finally sinking in. I grinned. Here's to my birthday. Emily's expression cycled through shock, anger, and then a raw edge of desperation. She'd choreographed every second of this night, scripting it like a drama where I was the clueless star, smiling as she swiped everything. She just hadn't counted on me being in the know. And now, I was about to flip her whole game upside down. I let the shredded papers flutter to the floor, watching the panic in her eyes as she grasped what had just gone down. You complete, she began, but I raised a hand, stopping her cold. Watch it, I murmured. All eyes are on you. And they were. The guests had shifted from passive onlookers to a riveted audience, stuck in an uneasy hush as the celebration veered into something far darker than they'd bargained for. I lifted my champagne flute and took a deliberate sip, cool, composed, fully in command. Emily, meanwhile, looked like she was on the verge of breaking apart. Her dad, Robert, stepped up, trying to smooth over the wreckage. James, son. I fixed him with a look, and whatever he saw in my face made him clam up fast. I'm not your son, I said, my voice unwavering. And I'm not someone you can play anymore. Robert swallowed hard. He wasn't used to me calling the shots, but that was the crux of it, wasn't it? For years, they'd banked on me being the pushover, the breadwinner, the guy who'd sign anything shoved under his nose without a second thought. Now, for the first time, they were seeing I wasn't that guy anymore. I set my glass down, straightening my cuffs. Since we're all gathered, I said, keeping my tone breezy, I've got a little show of my own to share. Emily tensed. James, don't. I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen. The TV on the wall hummed to life, and then the real performance began. The first slide popped up, a real estate contract, the one where Emily had secretly listed our house for sale. Gasps spread through the room. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." I smiled. I found it odd when realtors started calling, asking when I'd be ready for open houses. Emily went pale. I raised a hand. Hold off, honey. I'm not at the juicy part yet. The next slide appeared, a business ownership transfer form, submitted before this evening. Emily let out a choked noise. The guests weren't just watching now, they were pulling back, visibly unsettled. I pressed on. Next up, bank statements showing sketchy transfers to an offshore account. The crowd's reactions grew louder, people shifting awkwardly, stepping away as if standing too close to Emily might taint them with her schemes. Emily's fists clenched. James, end this right now. I turned to her, my grin widening. What, feeling humiliated? You ought to. I let the next slide roll, and that was the haymaker, security footage of Emily in a restaurant with some guy I'd never seen. No audio, but their body language screamed volumes. She leaned in, flirting, flashing something on her phone, something that looked a hell of a lot like the business transfer papers I'd just destroyed. I let the image sit there, then faced her. You know, Emily, if you wanted out, you could have just told me. Dead silence. She had no defense now. The proof was undeniable. Robert, her dad, her staunchest ally, couldn't meet her gaze. Even he couldn't twist this one. And then, in classic Emily fashion, she tried to switch gears. Her voice softened, her face morphing into something pleading, frantic. James, she whispered, it's all a mix-up. I was trying to look out for you. I let out a quiet laugh. Look out for me. She nodded fast. The business, the house, it's messy. I cut her off. You were only trying to swipe everything I've got and bolt. Her expression collapsed. James, please. No, the word hit like a sledgehammer, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. I turned to the lawyers, who'd gone rigid as stone. Gentlemen, I said, my voice smooth as silk, this contract is obviously a fraud. So, either you were in on the con, or Emily fed you a pack of lies. Either way, I'll be reaching out to the State Bar Association come morning. Their faces went white. One of them started to protest, then thought better of it. Emily edged closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "James, don't do this." "Do what, Emily?" I asked. "Call you out. Take back the control you thought you'd stolen." She reached for my arm, and I stepped back. That stung her more than anything. "You don't have to shame me," she murmured. I leaned in, just close enough for her to hear. "Honey," I said, tossing her own manipulative word back in her face, "I'm just getting warmed up." I turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think this party's wrapped up. Grab some champagne on your way out." A few folks hustled for the door. Robert had already vanished, slipping away like the spineless opportunist he was. Emily stood in the middle of the room, trembling. "James," she whispered one last time. I met her stare. "We're finished here." Her breath caught, and just like that, it was done. The scheme she'd so carefully woven, smashed to pieces. The life she thought she could steal, gone. And the best part? This was only the start. The air in the room grew thick, as if the walls had soaked up the tension and were pushing it back at us. Emily stood rooted to the spot, while the guests fidgeted, uneasy. Some were already edging toward the exit, eager to escape the fallout of a marriage clearly falling apart. Others lingered, their curiosity trumping their discomfort. I let them gawk because this was the moment Emily finally grasped the full weight of her actions. I could see it in her eyes, the instant it hit her that she hadn't just lost a skirmish tonight. She'd lost it all. She opened her mouth, then closed it. No more excuses, no more crocodile tears, no more deception. "James," she finally croaked, her voice raw. I didn't answer. I just held her gaze, waiting. She swallowed hard. "Can we just talk?" Talk. She wanted to talk after months of scheming behind my back, after plotting to take my company, my home, my entire world, after treating me like a pawn in front of friends and family, just another signature to collect. Now she wanted a chat. I tilted my head, letting the silence stretch until her fingers twitched nervously. "I think we've said plenty for one night," I said evenly. Panic flickered in her eyes. "James, please." I glanced at Chris, still posted up in the back, arms crossed. He'd been quiet the whole time, but I caught the faint smirk playing on his lips. "You saved that video?" I asked. Emily's breath hitched. "You bet," Chris said, holding up his phone, the red recording light still glowing. A wave of hushed murmurs spread through the crowd. Emily stumbled, her carefully crafted composure falling apart in front of everyone. "You recorded this?" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Naturally," I said. Didn't want anyone spinning a different story later. A choked noise came from her throat. "You trapped me." I let out a quiet laugh. "That's a bold claim, coming from you." Her breath caught. "James, you." I raised a hand. "Spare me." She'd lost all control now. Her voice, her posture, it was raw desperation. No fallback plan, no rehearsed lines, no safety net. That's when I decided to drop the final bombshell. "You know what's ironic, Emily?" I said, tilting my head. She blinked, speechless. "Just a few days ago, I might have actually bought into this," I confessed, letting the truth hang heavy in the air. "I could have been naive enough to sign those documents, to swallow the lies you were dishing out. I might have handed over everything, still believing deep down we were partners." I let that sit for a moment, then gave a slow, deliberate smile. Then I got a call. Emily went rigid, her entire frame locking up, her throat working as she swallowed hard. She knew. And she was terrified. I pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped the screen. The TV behind me buzzed to life, and this time, it wasn't contracts, bank records, or real estate scams. It was her. Emily in a hotel lobby. Moments later, another guy appeared beside her, the same one from the restaurant clip. This time, there was no mistaking what was happening. Her fingers grazed his chest. He leaned in, hands wrapping around her waist. Then she kissed him. Gasps erupted around the room. Someone's glass actually slipped and shattered. Emily swayed, barely steady. You had me tailed. I grinned. Damn right I did. She staggered back, as if I'd landed a physical blow. I pressed on. You thought I was clueless, huh? Thought I wouldn't catch the sudden late nights, the meetings that never happened, the way you pulled away. Thought I wouldn't dig into your credit card charges or question why your work trips always landed in the same city he calls home. Her lips moved, but no words came. So I leaned in, just close enough for her to hear. You should have covered your tracks better, I murmured. Her face collapsed entirely. She was exposed, not just for the money grab, not just for the house, not just for the business, but for stepping out with another man. And now everyone knew. Her dad, Robert, groaned, massaging his temples. Her best friend, Sarah, gaped at her like she was a stranger. Chris let out a soft whistle. Ouch, he muttered. That's gotta burn. Emily spun around, her expression frantic. It's not what you think. Robert cut her off. For Christ's sake, Emily. Her head whipped toward him. Dad, He shook his head. I can't even face you right now. And that was the moment she shattered. Emily could deal with my anger, could handle me walking away, but her father, the one who'd always had her back, who'd excused every move she made, he couldn't stomach this. And just like that, her last lifeline was gone. She stumbled, a trembling hand pressed to her forehead. James, please, just. I pulled the divorce papers from my pocket and slapped them on the table. She stared at them, blank, like her mind had short-circuited. I held her gaze. Sign. She let out a hollow, disbelieving laugh. You're not serious. I folded my arms. As serious as it gets. She glanced around, searching for someone, anyone, to swoop in and bail her out. No one moved. Not her dad, not her friends, not the guests who'd shown up expecting a party. They just watched her sink. She turned back to me, eyes blazing. If you think I'm leaving with nothing. I held up one finger. She froze. Actually, I said, my voice steady, that's exactly how this is going down. Her breath hitched. You're not keeping the house, I went on. You're not touching the business. You're not getting a single penny from me. She let out a sharp, bitter laugh, clutching at straws. You really think a judge will let you walk away scot-free? I smiled. Maybe not, but a judge will be real curious about your fraud, embezzlement, and real estate games. Her whole body went still. Then I leaned in for the knockout. And let's not forget, I added, the video evidence of you stepping out on me. Her face went blank, and her knees buckled. She gripped the table to stay upright, shaking. I tilted my head. Still think I'm playing? Silence. She knew I'd won. I set the pen on top of the papers and stepped back, waiting. She stood there, frozen, and after a long, agonizing pause, she grabbed the pen and signed. Emily's hand shook as she scrawled her name on the divorce papers. She knew this was the end of the line. The weight of her losses pressed down on her like a physical force, crushing her under the burden of her own schemes. The room's silence was stifling. No one stepped up to console her. No one spoke in her defense. Not even Robert, her own father. When she finally looked up at me, the fire and spite were gone, replaced by pure defeat. But I wasn't finished yet. I reached for the papers, checked her signature, and tucked them back into my folder, like I'd just sealed a deal, which, in a way, I had. Emily let out a jagged, broken laugh. That's it, she whispered. I cocked my head. That's it. She swallowed hard. You're just tossing everything away. Like that? The irony was so sharp it could have sliced through steel. Toss everything away. I nearly laughed. Me? I said, raising a brow. I didn't toss anything, Emily. You did. Her face crumpled, but she didn't argue. What could she say? That I was mistaken. That I hadn't given her every luxury she craved, only for her to betray me? There was no fixing this, and for the first time in our marriage, she got it. I stepped closer, dropping my voice so only she could hear. You know what stings the most? She blinked fast, holding her breath. I gave a cold smile. That I actually cared about you. Her whole body flinched. I stepped back, standing tall. But don't worry. That's a mistake I won't repeat. She let out a strangled noise, her hands balling into fists. I could see the battle in her eyes, the urge to strike back, to claw her way back into control, to fight any way she could. But she had nothing left, and she knew it. She turned sharply to her father. Dad? Robert, who'd been frozen since I laid her bare, barely glanced her way. She exhaled shakily. Dad, say something. Please. He sighed through his nose, rubbing his temples like he was nursing a migraine, not his daughter's downfall. This is a disaster, Emily, he muttered. Her jaw dropped slightly. A disaster? Robert shook his head. I told you to play this smart, and look at the mess you made. I let out a dry chuckle. Smart? She tried to con me out of my company and home, then got caught cheating on tape. Smart ain't the word for it. Robert finally met my gaze, his face a blank mask, but he didn't try to stand up for her or make excuses. He couldn't. Emily spun slowly, her breath shaky as she took in the room. The guests who'd once welcomed her with warm smiles now fidgeted, avoiding her eyes. She wasn't the star of the evening anymore, just a woman who'd bet everything and lost it all too soon. Her hands balled into fists. Then, out of nowhere, she snapped. You know what? She spat, her voice spiking. Screw you, James. The room froze again. I held her glare, unflinching. She was coming apart at the seams, unraveling right there for all to see. All of you, she screamed, turning to face the crowd. You're just standing there like damn mannequins, watching my husband. She stopped, letting out a bitter, broken laugh. My ex-husband, I mean. Watching him tear me down. A heavy silence settled in. Then one of her supposed friends, Sarah, maybe, spoke up. You brought this shame on yourself, Emily. Emily staggered back as if she'd been slapped. Her chest heaved, her eyes darting frantically, searching for someone to back her up. No one did. Not even Robert. That was the killing blow. Her father let out a weary sigh and took a step back. Let's get out of here, Emily. Her face twisted with betrayal. What? You heard me, Robert muttered, already heading for the door. No, she shook her head, voice rising. No, you're supposed to have my back. Robert didn't even glance back. Emily let out a choked, incredulous laugh, her gaze bouncing to Sarah, to the other guests, to anyone still there. Unbelievable, she whispered. Then, in a sudden, jagged motion, she snatched a champagne flute from the table and hurled it at the wall. It shattered into countless shards, and a few guests gasped. I didn't flinch. Neither did Robert. But security moved in. I'd arranged for them to be on hand, just in case, and now they stepped forward. Emily's head whipped toward them, her eyes wild. Are you serious? One of them, a tall guy with a stone-cold expression, spoke calmly. Ma'am, it's time to go. Emily let out a hollow laugh. You've got to be ing kidding me. She shot me one last look, something almost desperate in her eyes, but I just stared back, blank. No remorse, no pity, nothing. Whatever I'd once felt for her was long gone. She drew a trembling breath, then, scraping together what little pride she had left, she lifted her chin, spun on her heel, and stormed out. The second the door slammed shut, the tension broke. Someone let out a low whistle. Another muttered, "Holy crap." I took a deep breath, finally letting my shoulders ease. When I turned to Chris, he was grinning ear to ear. "Well," he said, raising his glass, "that was one wild birthday bash." I let out a tired chuckle. Not quite the night I had in mind. "What, you didn't plan for a front row seat to your own liberation?" I snorted. "Not exactly." Chris took a swig of his drink, then nodded toward the divorce papers still on the table. "You holding up okay?" I glanced at the papers, the signed proof of my freedom, the last traces of a life I'd built with a woman who only saw me as a stepping stone. Then, slowly, I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "I'm good." The party cleared out fast after Emily's exit. Most guests bolted, eager to dodge the wreckage. Robert slipped away without another word to me. Sarah lingered just long enough to mutter an apology for missing Emily's schemes. I barely acknowledged it, honestly, I didn't give a damn. All that mattered was the weight lifted off my chest, the freedom I hadn't felt in years. Chris slapped a hand on my shoulder as the last stragglers left. "You heading out?" I looked around the house, my house. The quiet. The stillness. And I smiled. "Nah," I said. "Think I'll stick around here for a bit." Chris grinned. "Sure. We could hit a bar, get you a real birthday present." I laughed. "Tempting, but I've had enough shocks for one night." He smirked. "Can't argue with that." And with that, he was gone, leaving me alone in a house that no longer felt like a cage. Man, that felt incredible. The house was transformed now. For the first time in years, it didn't feel oppressive. No more battleground, no more carefully laid trap. It was mine, fully and undeniably mine. I stood in the living room, the broken champagne glass still scattered on the floor, a few half-empty flutes left on the coffee table. The faint trace of expensive perfume, Emily's scent, hung in the air, but she was gone, and she wasn't coming back. I should have felt something. Regret, maybe. A pang of nostalgia. Hell, even sadness. But all I felt was relief, the kind that settles deep in your core and whispers, "You're free." I ran a hand through my hair, letting out a slow breath. The guests had been gone for barely 5 minutes, but the silence was already overwhelming. I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. My phone buzzed on the counter, snapping me out of my thoughts. I walked over, picked it up, and checked the screen. For missed calls from Emily. I stared for a second before swiping them away. She'd have to be delusional to think I'd pick up. Another notification popped up, a text from Robert. I raised a brow. He hadn't said a word to me since Emily's epic crash and burn, hadn't even tried to defend her when she begged for his support. I opened the message. "Robert *, you didn't need to humiliate her like that. Call me." I let out a dry laugh. I didn't need to humiliate her. She'd plotted to strip me of my house, my business, my entire life, and I was supposed to go easy. I typed a quick reply. "Me *, you should have taught her better." Then I powered off my phone and chucked it onto the sofa. By morning, the word was out. I hadn't shared a thing, hadn't fired off any grand announcements, but somehow, everyone was in the loop. Emily's betrayal, the botched setup, the damning evidence, the divorce, the wreckage of her reputation, it spread like wildfire. Chris called me around noon, laughing so hard he could barely speak. "Dude," he gasped, "I just bumped into Sarah at a cafe. Emily's completely unhinged." I raised a brow, sipping my coffee. "Yeah. Chris cleared his throat, still snickering. She's out there doing damage control, bawling to anyone who'll listen about how you framed her and wrecked her life. I let out a quick chuckle. That's a good one. Oh, and get this, she told Sarah the photos were misinterpreted. I snorted. Didn't know you could misinterpret a full-on makeout in a hotel lobby. Chris cackled. Right? But, man, Emily's imagination is something else. I shook my head. Let her weave whatever tale she wants. Facts don't bend. Chris hummed. You know, I almost feel sorry for her. I paused. Almost. But not really. She dug her own grave, I said. Chris went quiet for a beat, then sighed. Yeah, she did. After a long pause, he spoke again. So, what's your next move? I let out a breath, glancing around the house. It was the same place, yet it felt entirely new. For years, I'd been on autopilot, doing what was expected, crafting a life that looked flawless on the surface while it rotted beneath. Now, I had freedom. I had choices. For the first time in ages, my future was mine to shape. Not sure, I admitted. But for once, I'm excited to find out. By afternoon, another text came through, this time from Jessica, my attorney. Jessica * Emily reached out to my office. She's claiming she signed the papers under pressure. I stared at my phone, then let out a sharp laugh. Of course she was. Of course she was scrambling for a way out. I tapped out a reply. Me * lucky we've got video proof that says different. Jessica * exactly. She's got no ground to stand on. Just thought you should know. I didn't bother replying. Emily was grasping at straws. I figured she'd try one last stand, but the game had changed, she'd already lost. That evening, I finally let myself unwind. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, sank into the couch, and flicked on the TV. Then the doorbell chimed. I frowned, I wasn't expecting anyone. Setting the beer down, I got up and headed to the door. When I opened it, I wasn't shocked. Emily. She stood there in a long coat, hair a bit messy, eyes puffy like she'd been crying. She looked diminished, stripped of her usual confidence. I leaned against the doorframe. You're not supposed to be here. She licked her lips, glancing over her shoulder as if checking for watchers, then faced me. Can I come inside? I gave a dry laugh. Nope. Her jaw tightened. James, please. I don't owe you a thing, Emily, I said, keeping my tone even. Her breath hitched. For a moment, I caught something almost real in her eyes, regret, maybe guilt, but it didn't matter. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. She swallowed hard. I didn't want it to end this way. I tilted my head. What ending were you hoping for, exactly? She didn't answer because we both knew. She'd wanted me crushed, signing away my life while she walked off with everything. Instead, she was the one on my doorstep, empty-handed. I let out a slow breath. See you, Emily. Her lip quivered. James. I shut the door in her face. This time, I didn't glance back. The next morning, Jessica called again. Well, she gave it a shot, she said, amusement lacing her voice. I leaned back in my chair, stretching. What's she up to now? She called the firm at 2 a.m., demanding to renegotiate. I laughed. Let me guess, she's suddenly after a peaceful settlement. You nailed it. I shook my head. What did you tell her? I said the agreement's ironclad, and any attempt to fight it will trigger a full-blown fraud investigation, Jessica said, sounding downright chipper. I grinned. How'd she handle that? She hung up. Nice. I exhaled, rubbing my jaw. Let's wrap this up quick. Already on it, Jessica assured me. She won't touch a dime of your assets. I nodded. Perfect. I hung up, and for the first time in years, I felt it, calm. No more games, no more battles, no more wondering if the woman I married was plotting my ruin. She was gone, and I was still here, standing tall. I grabbed my coffee and stepped out onto the balcony, taking in the city view. The same skyline I'd seen every day, but today it felt different, brighter, more open, like a future that was finally mine. And damn, that felt amazing. The sun climbed over the city, painting the sky with warm hues of orange and pink, but the usual heaviness in my chest was gone. I stood on the balcony, coffee in hand, breathing in the morning air. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more Emily. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up to a scheming wife ready to explode my life. I wasn't caught off guard by her plots or trapped by her fake affection. And the best part? I'd never be anyone's fool again. A sharp knock at the door broke my thoughts. I wasn't expecting company, but I had a hunch who it was. I set my coffee down, crossed the apartment, and pulled the door open. Chris. He leaned against the doorframe, coffee in hand, a sly smirk on his face. Well, damn, he gave me a once-over. You look way too good for a guy whose world just got flipped upside down. I let out a laugh. That's 'cause my world didn't flip, Chris. I mirrored his lean against the frame. I just cut the dead weight. Chris grinned, stepping inside. Now that's a vibe I can get behind. He closed the door, tossed his coffee on the counter, and pulled out his phone. All right, he said, rubbing his hands together. Emily Watch 2024. Let's see what she's stirring up now. I raised a brow, amused. You need a better pastime. This is my pastime, he said, all cheer as he scrolled. Oh, jackpot. Emily's been busy. I crossed my arms, waiting. Chris smirked. She dropped a statement on social media. I gave a dry chuckle. Let me guess, she's playing the martyr. Chris grinned. Nailed it. Check this out. He cleared his throat with mock drama and read the post. Betrayal cuts deeper than anything life can throw at you. I poured my heart into someone I loved, only to have it flung back in my face. But I believe in redemption and new beginnings. To those who've offered support, thank you. To those who've judged without the full story, I forgive you. He lowered his phone, eyes sparkling. She forgives us, man. We're off the hook. I burst out laughing. Unreal. Chris shook his head. She actually thinks she can flip this for sympathy. Talk about desperate. I grabbed my coffee again. She's got nothing left. Her plan crashed, and now she's scrambling to paint herself as the victim. Chris took a sip of his drink. You care? I thought about it. Years ago, I would've. I'd have felt the urge to set the record straight, to make sure everyone knew the truth, to burn energy proving I wasn't the bad guy in her pity party. But now, I couldn't care less. Nah, I said simply. She can say whatever. I know what's real. And more importantly, I came out on top. Chris grinned. That's the way to play it. He glanced around the apartment, nodding approvingly. So, what's the plan now? That was the big question, wasn't it? For so long, my life had orbited around Emily's demands, her chaos, her needs. Now, it was just me. I sipped my coffee, letting the stillness sink in. I think, I said slowly, I'm gonna take it slow. Figure out what I really want. Chris nodded. Solid call. No diving headfirst into something new. I shot him a look. You think I'm dumb enough to make that mistake again? He chuckled. Point taken. I exhaled. I spent years building a life for someone who didn't give a damn. I'm over that. Whatever's next, it's for me. Chris raised his coffee in a mock salute. To James 2.0. I clinked my mug against his. To never getting played again. That afternoon, I took my first real step toward closing this chapter. I headed to my office. It had been weeks since I'd walked in without Emily's schemes looming over me, without wondering if she was plotting her next move. Today, I stepped inside knowing I was the one in charge. My assistant, Rachel, greeted me with a sly look. "Well, look who's back," she said, crossing her arms. "The man of the moment." I smirked. "Don't even start." She grinned. "I wasn't gonna say a word, except maybe that the whole office might have seen that viral clip of your ex getting taken down at your birthday." I groaned. "Please tell me it's not actually viral." Rachel's grin widened. "Oh, it's viral all right. Chris sent me the link. Want a peek at the comments?" I groaned louder. "Hard pass." She laughed, then got serious. "For real, it's great to see you back. The real you, not the stressed out, drowning in paperwork version." I let out a breath, nodding. "Feels good to be back." She slid a folder across the desk. "So, boss, what's the game plan?" I flipped it open, scanning the pages. For the first time in forever, I didn't see chaos or disaster. I saw potential. I leaned back in my chair, rolling my shoulders. "We're shaking things up around here." Rachel smirked. "Now that's what I like to hear." I met her gaze. "Good. 'Cause from now on, we're doing things my way." That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I treated myself. No corporate dinners, no forced charity galas with Emily, no schmoozing. Just me. I picked a spot I loved, ordered exactly what I wanted, sat at a table for one, and savored my own company. And for the first time, it didn't feel weird or empty. It felt perfect. Halfway through my steak, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, a text from Emily. I sighed, setting my fork down and opening the message. "Emily *, can we talk? Just meet me." I stared at it for a long moment. Weeks ago, I might have entertained the idea. I might have thought there was something worth saving, some closure we needed. But now, I was done. I typed 2 words. Me *, no point. Then I blocked her number. Just like that, I slammed the last door shut. No more excuses, no more apologies, no more Emily. I finished my meal, paid the check, and stepped out into the night, feeling, for the first time in years, that my life was mine. And man, that felt incredible. That's all for today's tale on Top Stories Hub. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and tell me what you'd like to see next.